Hi mathletes, welcome to section 5.2. This is part 2. This is a little bit of a little trick. It's a mini lesson that we're going to do using division of polynomials. So first up, we need to do a couple of warm-up problems. These will take you a little bit of time because as we know, the box method does take some time. A couple of hints before you start. Always remember that your diagonals are like terms and they add up to the little like terms in the dividend. Always make sure your left to right and top to bottom is always in standard form, and then you guys should be pretty good. So pause here, try 3 of those problems, and then return back for your answers. All right, number 1 is kind of like our easy elementary version of these now. So go back up here. So you should get 5x plus 6 is actually divided completely evenly, which means there is no remainder. Then number 2 just gets a little bit harder. We get a remainder on here. And just a little bit of a bigger box, so 4x squared plus 6x plus 2. And I wrote it on this one. Take a look at how I wrote it. You can write R5 for your remainder, or remember that you can also put it over the divisor. And then lastly, number 3 is the hardest version where we're going to have a 0 as a placeholder. And this time it was in our dividend, but remember it could be in our divisor. It could be really anywhere in the problem, but just in this case, I had a 0x cubed I needed to put as a placeholder, which meant my diagonals on the -6 had to add up to 0. And then we just had a remainder of -3x at the end. So whatever if you're making mistakes on these, please note what mistakes you're making. Sometimes they're very small. If they're bigger mistakes, like you don't understand how to do the problems, then I wouldn't continue on with these notes quite yet. I would go back to 5.1 and ask me questions before you start. But if you're comfortable enough with this, then let's move on to the shortcut we're going to learn today. So you guys are going to love something called synthetic division. It makes it so easy. This lesson is very short. So it's a shortcut, but don't get too excited. It's only a shortcut for a particular set of problems, and I'll show you which kind of sets they are. So this is only a shortcut if you're dividing by a polynomial in the form x minus r. So what does that really mean in normal people's terms? That means if you're dividing by something that just says x, and then it's like plus or minus some sort of number here. This term here, x, has to be the only thing in the front. So not 3x, not 2, nothing, or x squared, nothing besides actually x can be in this front part. If it's anything other than that, you have to do the box method for your problem. So for example, look at all the problems we have on our warm-up problems. You cannot do the shortcut for any of these problems here because they all have something in the front of the x's here. This one's even x squared on number 3. So don't, like I said, don't get too excited that you guys can be just not ignoring the box method. But for problems like this, as you can see below on number 1 and 2, you see how there's only an x here. Now we can use the shortcut. All right, so now I'll discuss what the shortcut is so you guys can get excited. So all you're going to do is arrange the coefficients. We're gonna not even care about the x's anymore. The coefficients of the dividend. Okay, again, dividend's that first parenthesis. So take these coefficients, again, in standard form, because sometimes Alex will want to make your life hard, and this will be out of order. So the x squared would be over here, something like that. Always make sure your problems are in standard form before you even start. So take those coefficients and you just write them down. Making sure I have no missing terms. If you have missing terms like we did in our last set of notes, you're going to have to use 0 as a placeholder. So just look out for that. Then we're going to make a division symbol, like a long division symbol if you guys were doing long division. Then you go to your divisor. You take that number back here, you give me the opposite of it. So -3. Now we are ready to begin. So you drop a line here. First things first, the way you have to get started with this is that you drop that first number down. It has to always be like that way because we have to get the process started. So drop the 3 down. This is 3. And this is how it's always going to go from now on. You do 3 times the outside number. So 3 times -3 is -9. And now you add those two numbers together. 13 minus 9 is 4. And now you repeat it again. 4 times -3 is -12. And again, we add 15 minus 12 is 3. So now that you're finished, these are the coefficients of your answer. So how do you write it out? So you go back to your divisor, this one, x squared. You subtract 1 from that. So if we're doing an x squared, I'm going to go back to x. And that's how you start your standard form. So the front number, 3, this one, that's going to be 3x. And then you continue on in standard form. So after an x term comes your constant, 4. And then your remainder is your last term, 3. So you see how 3, 4, and 3 are your coefficients of your answers. And that's it. That's your problem. So as easy as that thing is, and it's going to take you like a couple seconds once you guys start really getting into it, please just look for little minor mistakes. For example, people always put, like, instead of -3, they put +3 on the left-hand side. That's a silly, careless error. Or a lot of people want to like subtract here when we're just adding. Well, again, a little bit of minor errors. So clean those up as best you can because these should be the easiest questions you'll ever get on a test. So let's try another one together. So number 2, always check to see if you have any missing terms. Okay, so we can tell in our dividend. Dividend divisor, as we know, is hard and gets confusing. So dividend. We are missing the 0x squared term. Now we have everything in order. We have an x cubed, an x squared, an x, and a coefficient. Good. Okay, then we put those coefficients and line them up. So we have an invisible 1, 1, 0, -22, and wow. You see all that fun, how that happened? -22 and 15. Now we put a division symbol up top. We take the back number and the opposite. Very careful to do the opposite. And now we can begin our process. Again, the way you start it is that you have to drop down that first one. It just will always be that whatever front number is there, it's just going to stay exactly the same. Then we move on. So it's always 1 times -5 is -5. We add those two numbers together to get -5. And then we continue the process throughout. So -5 times -5 is +25. -22 plus 25 is 3. 3 times -5 is -15. And we get 0. And again, we know that last number is a remainder. So we're actually getting a remainder of 0, which is nice. Now we have to write out our final answer. Again, how you start your answer is that you take this degree, which is 3, you subtract 1. So we're going to start off with an x squared as our final answer. So just using them as a coefficients and going in standard form, x squared, because there's an invisible 1 here, you don't really need it to write an answer. So we're just going to put x squared. Then in standard form would be -5x, our constant 3, and our remainder is 0. And again, you don't need that, but just know that obviously the 0 is associated with the fact that that's a remainder. All right, see how quick and easy these ones are? All right, last one together, number 3. Again, always checking to see if you have any missing terms. It looks pretty good to me. And then always be approaching a problem. Let's say like this wasn't obviously a synthetic division set of notes. This was like on a quiz or a test and you don't know what you're doing. You need to be looking at this to be like, can I use synthetic division? Can I make my life easier? Yes, because there's a 1 in the front and it's just a to the power of 1. As long as that happens, I can use synthetic division. Anything else, you'd have to use the box. All right. So now let's drop down all the coefficients, 2, 9, 1, -8, and 7. We bring the opposite sign of the back divisor to the left-hand side. And then you start off by dropping the 2. Again, you multiply anything on the bottom towards the outside number, -4. So 2 times -4 is -8. We add those together to get 1. Multiply times the outside to get -4. We add those together to get -3. Multiply times the outside to get 12. And then we get 4. Lastly, multiply outside to get -16. And we get -9 as our remainder, as we know, is the last one. And how do we start off our answer? Always go to the front part, subtract 1. And then we start with our coefficient. So 2x cubed plus x squared minus 3x plus 4, remainder -9. You see how nice and easy that is to write out once you guys get the hang of it? And let's pretend that you guys didn't, for example, I'll move this down for you. I'll go back up here. You accidentally started, I don't know what you did, but you took that as it's going to start off with a 2x squared. So you would go 2x squared, this again in standard form would be x minus 3, and then you would say remainder 4, and then you don't know what to do with the -9. So the reason it works out so nicely and works out in standard form is because these are all placeholders for numbers. So you need to get that degree right at the beginning so it all works out nice and clean to get these numbers. So if you are writing your answer and you don't end with a remainder number, you obviously did something a little bit wrong. So here you go. So I'm going to have you guys pause here. Try number 4 all by yourself, but also keep in mind that if you guys don't like synthetic division, which I don't know why you want it, but you can always do these problems using the box method. If you like that better, then just do the box method instead. So if you want to do number 4, actually a really good idea would be number 4 synthetic division and do number 4 with the box method, and you should get the exact same answer, and you can also compare the different ways and how they relate and how they are different. So try number 4 all by yourself and come back for the answer. All right. So number 4, we know we could use synthetic division because the divisor is x minus 7, which means we're going to put positive 7 on the left-hand side. Drop down all your coefficients. I was nice and didn't give you a placeholder one. But actually your answer had a little bit of a placeholder situation going on. So I got 0 here, which is fine. That just meant there was no coefficient like we usually have. And that's going to happen. So don't get too scared when that happens. And then our remainder was 4. So I wrote it out both ways you're going to see it. And then again, a really good student would also have performed this using the box method just to kind of compare and make sure you guys did get the correct answer on this. So there's synthetic division. Again, get very excited because yes, this is an easy shortcut, but don't get too happy because these types of problems are the easier ones and won't happen too much. So happy dividing.